and welcome to Book of the Mouse Club, episode 61, Wednesday, June 16th, 2021.
Morning, monsieur.
Where are you off to?
The bookshop. I just finished the most wonderful story about a beanstalk and an ogre and...
That's nice. Marie! The baguettes! Hurry up!
I'm sorry, but how can one possibly pay attention to a book with no pictures in it?
My dear child, there are a great many good books in this world without pictures.
I almost bounced clear out of the book. Some bouncing, huh?
Come home or make myself known.
J. Thaddeus Turtle, Esquire. Have you never met him? You will find his story in this delightful little book, The Wind and the Willows.
I've come to return the book I borrowed.
Finished already?
Oh, I couldn't put it down. Have you got anything new?
Welcome back. I'm your host, Courtney, and I am joined, as always, by the Raya to my Sisu, my lovely co-host, Emily.
Oh, that was so nice of you. I'm glad I get to have Tuk Tuk. It's so good to be back. And Courtney, we have a special guest with us today.
Today, we're excited to welcome a fellow Disney fan and podcaster, Franky Dalog Jr. Franky is an active member of the Disney online fan community. Like both of us, their Disney journey started on a Disney college program and grew from there. Franky has channeled his love of Disney and activism into his podcast, Frankly Franky, which focuses on authentic conversations with members of the LGBTQ+ community, peppered with a pop culture twist. Welcome, Franky.
Hello, thank you guys for having me here.
So, Franky, we're really excited to have you join us today to discuss the art of Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon. But before we get to that, we want to hear more from you. Tell our listeners more about you. Tell us about yourself, your love of Disney, and more about your podcast, Frankly Franky.
So, I'm Franky. I'm about 27 years old now. I'm a first-generation Filipino-American, and I'm also part of the LGBTQ+ community. I identify as transmasculine, and I also use pronouns he/they. Now, I've been off and on with Disney for the last 6 years, but about full-time for the last two and a half years now. I do a lot of activism online, as well as activism and volunteer with several organizations, including the Disney's Internal Pride Organization, as well as the Asian American Pacific Islander one.
Very cool.
Now, I only started doing the podcast because I got furloughed again, and I needed something else to do. And I have a lot of friends that are part of the LGBTQ+ community, and I wanted other people to hear their stories. Since I already had a small following on social media, I decided to use that for better good and just share other people's stories that wouldn't have been heard otherwise.
Yeah, I love that you recognized your own platform. You know, certainly people, I feel like, see people with Disney experience. They love to follow that and follow along. But you took it a step further to engage other people within the community and give a voice to their experiences. So we're so excited to have your voice on our podcast today.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. I honestly didn't meant for my podcast to only be LGBTQ+, but it just so happened that all 7 of my episodes are all people of the trans and non-binary community.
Yeah, I think that's often, though, an underrepresented one in the community. So to have that focus, you certainly don't have to, shoehorn yourself into that, but it's great that you're off to such a strong start with it.
And starting a podcast, Courtney and I, we're now we're going into our 4th year now, Courtney.
Yeah.
Crazy. But even when we started, we had no idea where this was going to go. And it's kind of fun having podcasting such a fun space. And it's so open to anyone who wants to be part of it, which is great. And then you get to see where you go from it. So really excited to catch up on your latest episode and also see where you move forward with your podcast.
Once I have more time to do it, because I've been working.
We understand. That's why, I have so much respect for people who stick to a very regular content schedule, but we commit to 1 episode a month. Like, that's what we put out into the universe. Sometimes we have some busier months. Like this month, we will be able to do 3 episodes, which is exciting. But like 1 a month minimum, or not maximum, but minimum. We'll be there for you with 1 book, but we get that time can get in the way sometimes.
And it's meant to be fun.
Yeah.
All right, so we're all here today to discuss Raya and the Last Dragon, as well as the book, The Art of Disney's Raya and the Last Dragon. So before we get into our discussion, which, by the way, guys, spoiler warning, we are talking about this film. So if you have not watched it yet, you might want to go take a watch and come back to this episode. But let's learn a little bit more about the film to give us a little bit of context, and then about the book. So here is a very, very brief summary of the film. Long ago, in a fantasy world of Kumandra, humans and dragons lived together in harmony. However, when sinister monsters known as the Druin threatened the land, the dragons sacrificed themselves to save humanity. Now, 500 years later, those same monsters have returned, and it's up to a lone warrior to track down the last dragon and stop the Druin for good. And then a little bit about art of Raya and the Last Dragon. With never-before-seen development art, character sketches, storyboards, and color scripts, The Art of Raya and the Last Dragon gives fans a front-row view to the making of the Walt Disney Animated Studios animated feature. Art book from the new Disney film, Raya and the Last Dragon. There's colorful concept art from all original fantasy adventure, includes fascinating facts and details from the creators, and it's an exclusive look inside the studio as Disney's talented team of artists develop characters and create the Raya and the Last Dragon universe inspired by the diverse cultures of Southeast Asia. So again, spoiler warning, but want to hear from all of us. How did we approach this? All of us have a copy of the book. Thank you for Courtney and I, to our friends from Chronicle Books, for making this available to us. But want to know, did you read the book first, or did you watch the film and then go to the book?
For me, I watched the film as soon as it came out on Disney Plus. I didn't realize the book existed until a little bit afterwards. So before that, I was gearing up for the movie. I was like so excited. I was watching anything that was on YouTube. I was reading anything that was published about the film, because there wasn't really a lot of like hype about it from other people, and I was like, but why though? It looked so good. It looked so interesting, and I was like so interested on the different cultures that they were, picking apart for the film itself. And then the more I watched the trailers, the more other people were dissecting about it. Everyone else that I know in the Asian community were just like, oh, that looks familiar. That looks like that's from my culture. That looks like that's from my country. So it was very, very interesting to see everyone trying to like pick apart of like what is related to them, where they have seen that before, and just have it all cultivated in this one beautiful film.
Yeah, on my end, I also watched it the first weekend that it came out. Franky, did you see it in the cinema, or did you watch it on Disney Plus, or both?
I haven't seen it in the cinemas yet. I really wanted to, but at the time that it came out, I think I was either starting to go back to work and or wasn't comfortable with the theaters yet.
Yeah, I watched it at home as well, and I'd like to, it's still running in theaters. I was hoping to squeeze in a second viewing before the podcast, but it's still sold out over at Disney Springs when I was trying to go, so that's a great sign. But I paid the premium access on Disney Plus, and I feel like I watched the movie before the book made its way to my house. But Emily, I think you were the opposite, right?
Yeah, so I did not watch at the premium. I haven't done, Cruella was the first film that I did the premium access. So now that I've kind of gotten over that hurdle, I think I'll be doing premium access for others in the future. And I'm sad. I'm mad at myself now that I didn't, because I really enjoyed this film, and I'm sad I sat on it for so long. As for the book, I actually kind of did a 50-50. I started reading before the wider availability on, was it June 4th? So I read about half of it and then watched it and then read the other half. So I kind of got both in the middle. So that was my approach to it. And wow, what a great film.
Yeah, let's go into some of those overall impressions.
So actually, I was talking about this with another podcaster, Monica, about how people were saying Raya and the Last Dragon. Now, it's interesting because we're both Asian, and like we obviously knew that it was going to be Raya, but before they said it ever, like in the name of the trailer, everybody just kept saying Raya. And it was so interesting how English speakers here in, Western society would call it Raya versus anyone else from probably most other cultures, especially in like the Southeast Asian community, we say Raya. Like we'll look at it and we can be like, oh, that sounds like Raya, and that's how it's spelled, and that's how it's said. But for everyone else, it was like Raya. So like at first impression, when the movie or trailer came out with the title, what did you actually think that it was like said like?
I went with Raya. I don't know if I had heard it maybe internally at Disney before we actually got a trailer and just had it ingrained. But that's where my mind went with the pronunciation.
I actually also started with Raya, and I think that's because of my teacher background. I teach a very diverse group of students. So some of the phonetics that I've learned from my students from different cultures, I think kicked in when I read it as well, because I had students with similar spelled names with vowels before A's or before Y's, about like A's and EY sounds from Asian cultures that I heard Raya first in my head. But I also could have heard it as well from a trailer, but I went to Raya as well.
See, that's very interesting compared to like maybe like the last few other people that I've ever talked to about it. They always assumed
it doesn't surprise
Raya.
me. That doesn't surprise me that's
so
where...
we were just like, oh yeah. It's interesting how like the phonetics, especially with subculture backgrounds, how that affect the way you say things in English.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is unrelated to Raya, but I had the conversation with someone that often when you're reading and it's a word that you haven't heard pronounced, like we try to just fill in the gaps, and this is embarrassing, but as a child reading Harry Potter, for some reason I read Hermione's name as Hermione. Like that's how I tried to phonetically
You're not the only one.
Spell it out. So I completely get it, but I think it is important once you learn and someone says this is how it's pronounced to make sure you honor that.
Now with Raya the Last Dragon, I really, really enjoyed the film, mainly because they did put a lot of work in it with other Southeast Asian culture, predominantly with Laos, Cambodia, Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, and I think also Taiwan were like the big like cultural aspect of the film. And originally, before it was Kelly Marie Tran, the voice actress for Raya was actually, I believe, a Canadian Filipino or just Filipino in general.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, they made the switch to Kelly Marie Tran. They didn't really specify why and how. I mean, in an interview, I read that I think that Kelly Marie Tran, I think, gave more of the voice that they needed for Raya. But because it was already so late in development in terms of when they first announced the movie until like when they did release the movie, it was just one of those things where like it was kind of here and there, because a lot of the voice actors for the film are actually of East Asian descent. So while the film is based on Southeast Asia, it was kind of disappointing to read and see that majority of the other voice actors were part of East Asia and not part of Southeast Asia, which were like, well, if you're kind of making a film of Southeast Asia, you kind of want to put more voices in there.
Yeah, I had heard a little bit about that. It was similar to what you shared that they talked and framed about in terms of the character of Raya herself and where they, like, I guess the personality and the voice matching that.
Right. Like, don't get me wrong, Kelly Marie Tran is great, and she did great as a voice actress, but it was just like, when they first announced the voice actors for Raya and then switched it up and like, halfway, 3/4 of the way till the release of the film, it's kind of like left a little bit of a taste in my mouth about it.
No, I think it's important because this movie is being celebrated for its representation and authenticity in that, but that seems like an area that, could have been improved a little more because there are differences between East Asian and the South Asian cultures.
So, other impressions overall about the story, about the characters?
For me, I really thought the film was absolutely beautiful. The animation in it, which is why I'm excited to get into the art itself. There was just such rich backgrounds, the outfits that the characters wear, the use of color in this film was very distinct across the lands, and I felt that was further enhanced in the book.
I also loved, I'm trying to think if Disney's had, since The Black Cauldron, maybe like a really good high fantasy story. And this story was a lot more cohesive and easier to follow than The Black Cauldron. But I love the world building that they created with these lands. And after watching this, I really hope we get some shorts, because I feel like with the creation of this beautiful world and all of these rich cultures together, we could spend so much time here. And I really hope we get some like Tuk Tuk Adventures, or all of our characters from the different lands, that we get some shorts to learn more about their stories, and Fang and Talon and Hart. I think there's just so much room here to continue to explore. And that's what I was most excited about finishing the film. Was I was like, I want to see more. I want to go back and spend more time in these spaces. And I think that's a really great thing that we haven't seen, I think, in a while. They really took Frozen and expanded that, but we only had Arendelle, and I feel like we have a whole world here. It's not just a city. We have an entire world, and I really hope we get to explore more of that moving forward.
Yeah, I really love the world building. It was fast enough pace where you can follow, and it wasn't too slow in most parts, like in certain other films where like there is like this slow dipping point. For this one, it just kept you entertained. Like when I was first watching it, I was just like, okay, just keep going. And there was not a time where I would just like doze off type of thing. Because I have a really bad attention span with films. So that's why like I really stick to animation movies, because they're a lot shorter in length and I can follow that all the way through versus most films. But this one, I was just like really, really into it. Now, with this film, especially with Disney Plus, if you were to watch it with subtitles, you'll notice that the words that are not in actual English are italic. So that indicates that it's from another language, or from a language that's within the film, or an actual language that's outside of the film. So like next time you watch the movie, watch it with subtitles, and then you'll see the differences in terms of what the words are, but by context you should be able to figure out what they mean.
Yeah, that's a great
That's so cool.
suggestion. I'll plan. I think that's a nice thing about having it available to Disney Plus. It's so easy to revisit. And I wanted to pick up on what you said, Franky, about the pacing. I feel like, based on the title, this could have easily been just a long quest for the last dragon, but we meet Sisu within like the first 20 minutes of the film, and it's their journey together. So I appreciated that and the building of their relationship. But I also wanted to comment on, Emily, what you said about it being a very original story. I think this is especially distinct given that within the book and other marketing that I've seen mentioned, like they're considering Raya part of the Disney princess family. And so many of those stories are based on fairy tales. I know some are more loosely interpreted than others, like Tangled and Frozen really expand beyond their source material than a straight retelling. But correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like this is Disney's first truly original princess. It's kind of confusing if Moana's part of the lineup, but parts of her story are still tied to Maui's legend. So I feel like it's a continuation of this is a fully original journey.
If Raya's not part of the princess lineup, I don't want it.
They said in the book Princess, so we had actually read earlier this year The Art of the Disney Princess, and that book came out at the end of 2020, so it was very much, this is the current lineup, but I would love an addition to that book with more on Raya. So give her like a coronation ceremony, but make it like really cool, because she has such I think a distinct style to her.
If she doesn't fly down with a Sisu animatronic,
yes,
then,
bring back the Fantasyland dragon that we only saw apparently for like one night when New Fantasyland opened.
Yes.
Reskin with a Sisu effect. So,
or the Lego dragon in Disney Springs.
Oh, okay.
Sisu is a water dragon. Let's get Sisu in Disney Springs.
I'm on board with
make
that.
Make it all blue. Let's go. Let's go.
Just paint the Legos. It's fine. You don't need to reconstruct it. That would be really cool. I love that idea, Emily.
Yeah, I think I guess we could jump to theme parks, but I think there are some fun spaces that she could enter, particularly in Animal Kingdom, since we have, or hey, make a new land. We can finally get dragons in Animal Kingdom. That would be cool. But I think there are some cool spaces being fantasy that there's a lot to play with here, which would be so fun to have in the park.
I'm waiting for the day they bring out a Raya character.
Yeah.
I will die.
I would love
right there.
A Raya meet and greet. I feel like right now, you know, things are coming back within the parks, but hopefully the enthusiasm for this film would lead to, I feel like, would make a great parade section. I know there isn't really music in this film, which makes me sad because I do love my princess musicals, but I get it, like, it wasn't perhaps the right tone for this story. But
I mean, to be fair, Merida didn't really have princess music.
That's
she had like a song that she didn't even sing,
it's like
but
a
they still
credit
incorporate, into it.
There's no excuse then. Add Raya to Festival of Fantasy and bring it back.
So like after the film had came out, Disney posted on YouTube songs for the movie. I just don't think it got put in the movie, but it's for the movie. And they have it, I believe, in 2 to 3 different languages.
Cool.
Now, it's crossed over with English and a couple other languages. I believe Vietnamese and Cambodian. I do not remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I know the English singer is actually Filipino. And they also have several other versions of one of the songs in the film for the Southeast Asian language versus how Frozen was with Let It Go, where they had 30 different, languages, but in one song. This one is, here's one in whole translation in Tagalog, here's one in whole translation in another language for the movie itself in their respectable languages.
That's really cool. I think it's really cool to see, and we've commented that we have a ways still to go. But I think I've seen some good progress forward on this film. Particularly, we can start talking about the book, but the amount of research they showed and the groups of people they brought together. I think we're seeing Disney tap into this, and particularly in this past year, seeing them add the 5th key of inclusion. I'm really excited what else is going to be coming down the line now, and Raya is a really great start to be like, look what we can do when we do this with research, with voices, with representation, and how great it can be, and we can continue to do that. It works. There's no excuses to not do it.
And I feel it's about not only telling authentic stories, but doing so authentically with people from those cultures to tell those stories. Like, you have to have the right people in the room, and just based on the discussions that I've heard and seen, I think that's starting to get through and come through for them.
So let's talk about the book. We've started talking about the movie, but how did the book, The Art of Raya and the Last Dragon, enhance the film for you? What was something maybe you took from the book that made your viewing experience better, or reflected on afterwards that you're like, oh?
For me, I said that I enjoyed the beauty of the film, but as someone who's not from that cultural background, I really appreciated how much the book went into their inspiration and the meaning behind some of their choices. We had previously discussed an art book at the end of 2020 for The Art of Soul, and I remember remarking in that discussion that it was mostly pictures, and there was certainly some text, but I felt there was way more text and way more context in this book compared to that, and it gave me, not that I was criticizing the Soul book, but I was like, yeah, I would have benefited. I still enjoyed that book, but I would have benefited from hearing more from those involved about the choices that they made. And I felt that was so prevalent throughout this. And this is only the second art of book. Well, The Art of the Disney Princess was its own thing, but in terms of focused on films, I can only contrast between those two. And I felt this was a much richer experience to enhance my film viewing. I feel like The Art of Soul complemented Soul well and like let me look at more pretty pictures, but this really gave me a deeper glimpse into the process behind this movie.
Now, with me, I enjoyed reading the book because it gave me more of a background to my own cultural background, more so than I've had with my parents. Now, I'm a first generation Filipino American, and I only just visited the Philippines recently in 2019. I was there for 3 weeks, but the last time I went to Philippines was back in like 2005. So it's been a while since I have been back to my parents' homeland. And when I went, I was basically culture shock. So yes, I'm Filipino, but I'm also Filipino American, where I don't have that same everyday, lifestyle with everyone else in the Philippines and with my other family and things like that. So reading the book and seeing how they go further into like centuries ago in terms of the culture, it's really great because it's something that I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to start learning because there's not really a class on Filipino culture in college, in high school, things like that. And then online, it's here and there, and you got to find like reputable resources. So reading this, and especially since how a lot of Southeast Asian cultures are melded in together all the time, that like yes, it is. This is specifically for the Cambodian culture, but I do see that in the Filipino culture and things like that where they do relate to each other. Because unlike in the US where I feel like everybody has to be cut dry about their culture, which is I hate that. Whereas you go to any other minority cultures, they're all blended, they all share things from one another, and that's just what makes it great because yeah, I'm Filipino, but I also really love Chinese food and Japanese food because I kind of grew up on that. So I'm not afraid to like walk down to Chinatown versus like a few of my white friends who are afraid to walk in Chinatown. And I'm like, no, I promise you, they just really want your money. They want you to spend things because that that shop in Chinatown is Japanese based, was probably owned by a Korean man. Things like that. It's like that's a thing. But because people are so not ignorant, but like oblivious to the difference in culture. That they do think it's all melded into one, but when it comes to political correctness, they try to pick apart, and it's only the people in the U.S. are like that, or specifically white folks, where they like to pick apart the culture and be like, "That's wrong. You're doing cultural appropriation." Where everyone else is like, "No, we're just sharing things, and we're making it world, more." Pronounced, I guess, if that makes sense. So reading this book is great because you get to see all the different cultures and all the different aspects that goes into the movie. And reading one thing about one culture, can relate to another thing in another culture, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be separated.
So what I was thinking about from what the book did for me, I would be really curious about your perspective on this. What I got from the book was, I think from that white American perspective, going into Raya and Last Targaryen, I knew there were lots of lands, and I knew it was based on several Southeast Asian cultures. I was expecting that like Talon would be this specific culture, and Spine would be this specific culture, kind of like having all of those countries represented, almost like a world showcase of sorts of Kumandra. But they were very integrated in every land. You can't say Spine was specifically one culture from Southeast Asia or Heart. They were all integrated throughout. And kind of what you said in the beginning of this episode, that you noticed your friends were picking out in different parts of trailers, like, that looks familiar and that looks familiar. Did you pick up and like that they were all melded together instead of each land of Kumandra was a quote representation of a country or a culture?
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially when you saw the stuff about the night market, I was like, wow, these are things that I've experienced in Japan when I was a youth. The things are experience that I experienced in different Chinatowns all across the United States. The night markets are very common in most Asian cultures or most cultures in general. So seeing that specific thing, I didn't think of a specific country overall. I was like, oh, okay, that's the type of area that country has. Now, in my perspective, with all the different lands in Kumandra, they're based on areas, not so much cultures.
Okay.
So when everything is integrated and melded together, you can find those same 5 areas in every single country. So it's not specifically, again, where it's cut dry. These are the commonalities of what each culture has.
I'd love to go into those lands and talk about which were our favorites, and then maybe did you learn anything else about those lands from the book?
I really like Tail, mostly because of the way like Captain Boone is. Now, Captain Boone is a mischievous con artist for a 12-year-old, you know, but he's doing what he can to make a living, which is a very common thing in most, Southeast Asian countries because of, a lot of them are third world. You know what I mean? Third world, where there a lot of the resources aren't available or accessible like here in the States. So seeing Captain Boone trying to scam Raya with congee, which is, a very popular dish in Southeast Asia, where in my culture, it's translated into rice porridge, but it's either called arroz caldo or lugao. You'll hear arroz caldo actually from Hispanics as well, which is I'm pretty sure is around the same kind of dish, just different tweaks of seasoning and stuff. But like watching it, I was like, wow, that looks like food I eat at home because exactly it's the same food that I eat at home.
Cool, I love that connection.
And like, oh no, the food is great. When I was watching it with Heart, when the dad was putting all these, things in the soup, it looks exactly like the soup that I posted on Twitter the other night. Because, every culture and every family has their own version of like this homemade comfort soup, which here in the States, it's chicken noodle soup and, things like that. Whereas like you go to other cultures where like, here's all this, I have like a sour soup. It's like a tamarind root sour soup in English. And I put tomatoes, onions, spinach, the tamarind root mix and like fish sauce, and it creates this really well-bodied comfort soup, and I obviously serve it over rice, which I had before this podcast. So Heart and Tail, I think, are like my favorite lands just because of the aspect of trying to fight for your living, and then as well as the food part and Heart.
So Courtney, here's hoping we don't have the same answer. My favorite land, or the one I would like to visit the most, would be Talon.
Emily, we have the same answer.
Oh, wait. I get to claim it this time because I went first.
You get to go first.
So like you said, that night market culture, that's what I want to see the most. And every film with Southeast Asian culture that I've seen, that's what I'm drawn to. It seems so exciting. The food stalls look amazing. I just want to try everything. I love the color. Was this the only land where we really got night scenes in the film?
I think it was still night when they're at Spine, but it's a much starker contrast because the weather has changed so significantly with the snow.
Yeah, I loved the night scene here. And in the book, I loved how they talked about using light and using all of these different geometric shapes. And the colors here are just gorgeous. So I was really drawn to this. This is where I would want to go because I like the idea of this is the cross section of where everything is, all of the different lands. They come here to trade. So you would get to have a little bit of everything in one place. And I think that's so cool. And that would be my favorite to visit. Heart was beautiful. And I think I would love to go there as more of like a longer stay. Like if I had to live somewhere, I'd want to live in Heart. But Talon would be, as a traveler, if I was going to visit, I would want to start there.
Yeah, I liked the description in the book. This is from co-director Paul Briggs. And it says, quote, "Every epic fantasy film needs a watering hole, and Talon is ours. Like the cantina in Star Wars, Talon is a place where people from all walks of life converge, selling things, bartering, and trading. A pure pop of color and fantasy." And I also picked up on the color as well. And speaking to how the book enhanced this for me, the book is really well organized into sections where it focuses on the story development, specific characters, and the lands are all in order, and they all have their own introduction, but also a complementing page opposite that introduction where it has design elements and different color palettes that were used. So Fang is described as power colors. Spine has cold/overcast colors, and Talon is coral reef colors, and these are bright pops of pink, purple, yellow, and those are my 3 favorite colors. So I think just visually I was already biased being drawn towards this because those, no pun intended, shine through in Talon.
I also feel like Talon has, this was something I didn't pick up on. So I think it was around Heart, Heart and Tail is like where I stopped, watched the film, and then came back. So going back into Talon, this was the first time I came back into the book after seeing the film and realizing some of those really cool design elements that I missed. And a piece they point out in the book a lot about Talon is that innovation, like you talked about, Franky, of people thinking outside of the box to make their living, to stand out. And all the different boats that there were different shaped boats. Some look like shrimp. And the one they have here on that page, you were talking about, Courtney, with like all the inspiration, someone who is in a giant turtle shell. And I was like, how did I miss that? It was blended so seamlessly into the world that I didn't quite pick up on it. And I was like, that is so cool. And I want to go back now and watch and look for those design elements.
Now, what I love about Talon and the night market is how realistic it is, like insanely realistic. Like my trip was December of 2019, and we visited night markets and food stalls in the Philippines, and I'm just like vividly watching the movie, and I'm like, I was there. I'm here with the guy who's serving me fried fish balls fresh off the cart, just having like a plastic cup and just serving the food right there in front of me. Or my mom was bartering with another worker because she wanted to get things on sale. They were like, oh, you guys must be foreigners. And my mom's like, no, I'm not. You're gonna lower that price. But like in full Tagalog. Yeah, and like it was just so funny to just hearing my mom yell at them to like lower the price because she knows she was getting scammed.
Did she get her good deal?
She did.
Good,
she did.
Good.
She did. But like, it was just funny because I'm just like, Mom, I haven't seen you yell like this in so long.
Things get intense in the night market.
Yeah, but like how accurate it is like it's crazy how much work they put into it. And again, because it's so well integrated with all the other cultures, it's not just specific to one. It's literally just like the way I talked about earlier, is that each land of the film, it's just a specific area in each country and in each culture that it is everywhere until you get to finally experience it. It's kind of hard to visualize yourself.
It was really cool. And I liked that the dragon motif is in every part of Kumandra. And I do love that they're along the Dragon River that looks exactly like Sisu, which is kind of cool. But I think it's also a great visual too, because as you're watching this and the fact that the names of the lands are very tied to what part of the dragon they're along on the river, it made it so visually, it was very, the word just like.
Visually connected?
Connected? I was saying vivid, but it was a different word for vivid. That just went like, but it was just like, so visually connected. It was very vivid and it was easy to remember. I love that this was really high fantasy, but it wasn't confusing. And the lands also rich in all of these cultures and different colors. Again, it wasn't, as someone who enjoys high fantasy, I love Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is the first one that came to mind as like what you think of as high fantasy. But Lord of the Rings can be really confusing. Where are you in this timeline? Where am I in the world? The map, there's lots of everything is it can be really crazy. You have to watch it or read it numerous times to really pick up on everything. And I really enjoyed the readability of Raya, that you can appreciate these cultures that are being introduced to you without getting overwhelmed. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. You don't feel
able to follow it
like an outsider. You're able to easily take in the story, the plot points, and move along through it effectively without having to rely on like too much heavy exposition or background. Is that where you're going?
Yeah, and it made it easier, I think, too, as someone who is not of Southeast Asian descent. It made it easier for me to enter and immerse myself as my first steps into getting to appreciate these different cultural backgrounds and influences without, like you said, having to get caught up in like, where am I in the story? I'm lost. I love the readability of it so that the cultures could stand out.
Now, what I will say about in terms of readability with the movie, I loved how they basically took what Moana had in terms of telling the legend of Maui and incorporating that style of the legend of Sisu at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Like how, here's the different paper arts and things like that, trying to describe the different different parts of the legend and how, it came to be, as well as in the very beginning when the dad was making the food, he was describing this piece of food is from this country, this piece of food is from this country. So I think they kept it at a very specific order for you to remember throughout the whole film, which makes it easier on the audience.
That's a great point. And then again, within the book, we were sharing that the lands in the book are in the order that they visit as well. So good structure there.
So following that structure, now that we've talked about the lands in the book, it gives us that background and what the lands look like, their inspirations, but we also get the characters. And I love that this film had so many characters. I like that we got a diverse group of characters. You made that comparison to Moana, which I think there are some fair comparisons between the two or similarities where we have that opening legend. We have a female story that's not romantic in any way. It is an adventure, and I love that. But we get a lot more voices, which I think is really cool. And also the way they described it in the book is they wanted two main characters. Like Raya is the title character, but Sisu is she gets almost as much screen time as Raya. They're together through a lot of this, and their growth together is really important. Whereas like Moana and Maui, they work together and they are together, but it's very clear like this is Moana's story. Whereas both Sisu and Raya have some growing to do connected with each other. But who were your favorite characters? What did you learn about them through the book?
I loved Raya, and I also love Namari. Now, the reason why I love both is because while, yes, the film is not romanticized at all in terms of relationships, they both had I'm going to say it, like they both had very queer energy for each of them in different ways. Because like Namari had a haircut, yes, while it is, basically based upon the culture, but it's also a haircut that is regarded as, more masculine, things like that. But, in the film, Namari is still, a princess or some sort of royalty among her land, and so was Raya. And Raya's over here doing martial art, being the guardian of the dragon gem, So it's like they're both, obviously feminine-looking characters, but they both have very masculine or gender-neutral qualities that gives more of a relatability in terms of the character's aspect to everyone else, and not, like when you identify with, say, Queen Elsa or Princess Anna, they're very heavily, feminine quality based and things like that. But like when you identify with Raya, a lot of people are like, she's strong, she does this, or she wants to do good for her father, save her family. That's not your typical princess qualities, if that makes sense. And same with Namari as well. Is like she was under the guidance of her mother, who thought she was doing for the best for her family, but she decides to grow up and find that connection that she had with Raya earlier on in the film and trust her, make that decision that benefited everyone else, because she had doubts about things.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
No, it does. And I love that you brought that up between them. Namari is personally my favorite because I liked how complicated she was, and in her relationship with Raya, because I don't want to call it a friendship. I think there could have been one between them, but it really is a complicated relationship in the sense that they shared these common interests, but there's an ulterior motive behind Namari initially trying to befriend her at the opening part of that film. and then the distrust between them moving forward. I thought that was such a nice foil to have. I don't want to call Namari a villain because she does have this, like her mom is more of the villain, but to have this foil who's of the same age as Raya, I feel like often the relationships we've seen in films where, you know, you have your protagonist and their foe or who they're up against through most of the film, they are, there's an imbalance between them. Like think like Captain Hook and Peter Pan. You know, Peter Pan is much younger. I feel like often it's younger characters against an older foe, whereas these are two people who, you know, could have very well been friends or grown up together, but they're clashing, and I just loved the complicatedness of their story and their relationship.
I think there's a lot of realness there too, that we can all at some point identify of how, while it happens very quickly in this film for plot's sake, but we all have friends that maybe we grew apart from, or you had a falling out of some sort. So you have one half of you that feels for that person because you had a friendship and a connection, but then something bad happened and you're like, we're just not that close anymore. I think they had a lot of relatableness, that I think a lot of viewers can come to. Even if you're learning about Southeast Asian culture, we have a universal humanity that you can identify with in their friendship. And also to Franky's point, I really liked that their qualities, their appearance, their personalities were never questioned. Often when we get a strong female character, they're like, wow, you fight good for a girl. Or I like someone always makes some sort of comment of like, wow, that's unexpected. It's never questioned by their families, by other cultures, that they fight. There's martial arts. They are guardians. No one asks why they're not. They wear formal wear at some point, but no one's like, why don't you wear a dress? There's never that conversation. It just exists and it's normal. And I really liked that.
See, what's great about that in terms of the formal wear and things, like in other Southeast Asian culture, they do have a specific formal wear, but it's not normally specific for one gender.
Oh, that's really cool.
A lot of cultures, they have a mix of like long dresses and things like that. I don't know if you noticed, a lot of Vietnamese, Thai, and other East Asian cultures will have what they call an áo đai. And a lot of men would wear it with pants. And sometimes they don't. But it's like that stereotypical like Chinese formal wear that you see people wear or for costumes. But they have them specific for different cultures, and that's not necessarily gender specific, which is nice. So like watching the movie, you'll see that the different like outfit, the different lands wear, it's not so much gender specific, but it's more culturally specific, if that makes sense.
I agree that, and that came through very clearly to me in the book, because in this character section we get to see alternative designs for each characters, and I particularly enjoyed that because I think about merchandising, which I know is probably not the right path to go, but when I was younger, I loved my dolls and like the outfits that would come through from the movies. I love Beauty and the Beast Enchanted Christmas. My favorite Barbie doll was Belle in her red Christmas dress, and so I'm just picturing all of these great outfits that the realm of possibility, and they often did. I feel like we got to see different outfits in the film, so it was great to know both from you, Franky, and within the text, the cultural influences that played into those outfits, what they represented, and then how they shaped those designs to tie to the characters. Like young Namari has very sharp edges to her. She's from Fang, so they're visually playing into that, into the style, both in its cultural representation, but also its representation for the characters themselves.
I want to talk about Tuk Tuk.
Go ahead.
Because I thought he was the cutest thing. And I loved this quote here from Don Hall, the director. When the story called for a baby version of Tuk Tuk, production designer Corey Loftus whipped up this tiny furry ball of love, and it took an extraordinary amount of discipline to not turn the film into Baby Tuk Tuk and the Last Dragon. And that made me giggle. And I was like, this was still when I read the book before I saw the film. I was like, oh, that looks cute. And then I saw him in the film. I was like, Oh, and I've been a big Pascal like sidekick fan. I think Tuk Tuk might take it
Uh-oh.
for me. I thought it was just one so clever. I loved the imagination, the high fantasy here. They also had like the mouse, that when the mouse hits water, they get like these fins and like bright color like blues. I just loved the imagination. And he's so cute. It like took me back to almost like my Pokemon days, like as a kid. Like you would love how creative and what these different animals could do because they have multiple different animals as their parts, which is really fun. And I thought he was really cute. I think it was good, like he said, they had that discipline. It was very clear that Raya, her crew, Sisu were the focus. But I do like how they gave us lots of different animals. We had Tuk Tuk, we had the cats from Fang, we had the different fish. It looked really cool. And I like that world of immersion went into having also entire different vegetation and animal life, which I thought was fun. But I am here saying I want a Tuk Tuk short. I want it.
Now, regarding Tuk Tuk, actually that is an alternative name for modes of transportation I know commonly in the Philippines and in Thailand.
Cool.
Wow, cool.
It is what people, it's, I guess, more of a slang term for the motorbikes. Normally it's either 2 wheels or 3 wheels.
Okay.
So it makes sense that Tuk Tuk's name is Tuk Tuk because he rides mode of transportation.
They even say in his creation that part pillbug, part pug, part high speed off-road vehicle. That is what he's meant to be.
That was it. When I was in the Philippines, we crammed all 5 of us in a motorbike and a small sidecar.
Oh, wow.
And plus the driver. So I'm trying to remember how we situate everybody because we've done this multiple times. So the driver, and then like my dad or my sister was behind the driver, like on the backside of the bike, and then me, my mom, and my other sister were trying to fit in this sidecar. There was an outside portion as well as an inside portion.
Oh my gosh, I'm just picturing people riding Hagrid's motorbike adventure, like all crammed in to one thing like that. Not safe, but you get around the way you can.
It wasn't safe, but it got to point A and point B. But like that was, that's what the modes of transportation was, especially in countries like those that were like, in those rough roads and driving a car over there. Oh my God, it's the most stressful thing in the world. I'd rather die on a motorbike than drive my car over there.
Oh gosh, I can't even imagine.
But like, when I heard that it was Tuk Tuk, I was like, oh, I recognize that from somewhere because again, it was something that was in the country of my parents, which was Philippines. So the way
and they
that
didn't mention that in the book, so thank you for that context. I was
like, I'm pretty sure I read it online, like before the movie had came out, when they were mentioning all the characters' names and stuff like that. And I was like, where have I heard that before?
Very cool. Well, as we wrap up here, I'd love to know what each of us took away as the theme or the message of the film. And then was there any way that the art in this book kind of helped further that theme for you?
In terms of the book and the theme, which is trust, basically, I liked how they divulged into the different backgrounds of each land, the different backgrounds of each characters, but like why they did the things that they did in order for their land to flourish, because that's what the big thing is. What they all wanted the gemstone to make their land flourish because it was suffering. And obviously throughout the whole part of the film is they were so distrusting of each other that because they couldn't trust each other, that nobody was flourishing. Heart wasn't flourishing, tail, talon, spine, fang, none of those lands were flourishing where it should be until obviously the very end where they decide to trust each other. And the book did help reincorporate that theme because, again, you get more backstory into, why they look the way they are, why, the colors are the way they are, because it's only very specific to those lands, and putting them all together just makes the world such a more, beautiful place.
I think the soup, too, was a visual representation of that as well, and a good analogy for, like, look how delicious and wonderful this meal can be when you take everyone and put them together. So there were multiple ways. I like that there were multiple ways to enter this, and they had different analogies. And you have the contrast between Raya, who I think Raya shows through her story that trust is a fragile thing, but it's also, because we also have Sisu, it's also a redeemable thing. And look at the relationship between Raya and Namari. They're able to maybe not completely repair that initial friendship they had, but they're working to get there, and trust can be that first step to repairing damaged relationships. So I really like that there were multiple ways to think about trust. It wasn't just trust somebody. There were multiple variations of what trust can look like.
Yeah, I saw that too. And it wasn't just focused on Raya's need to learn to trust. It comes across, you could even be too trusting, like when Sisu is in Talon and she gets tricked by one of the chiefs there. So there's different layers to the trust, and I felt that this was a very layered film. We've talked about the many different ways that come through in this book, in its art, and in its story.
I think they make it also very poignant, where if you weren't picking up on it before, there's that conversation between Raya and Sisu, which they summarize here in the book. I think it's the direct quotes, but it's integrated here. It says, "The bigger philosophical questions the movie asks are important to the filmmakers and are timely as well as timeless. Its hero Raya believes that, quote, in a broken world, you cannot trust anyone, unquote. While her father, Chief Benja of Heart, and Sisu the Last Dragon believe, quote, the world is broken because you don't trust anyone, end quote." So I do like they let them have that verbal conversation, too, of talking about trust. It wasn't always just symbolic around you. They also openly talked about it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to close us out there as we wrap up. Did you have a favorite scene or just any parting thoughts on the book before we share our resources?
So I had a couple. I really enjoyed in this book, we get a lot of dual page, like full layout scenes, particularly of the scenery. But one of my favorites is, I have two. Page 130, 131 is that clashing scene where Raya and Mari finally have that big battle in Fang's like throne room, and it's just gorgeous. The colors, the determination of the two characters, and I love how they played with a lot of wide angles so we could use the scenery to its. They built this beautiful world and they let us see it. So I really liked some of these like 2-page, and we get the same thing again in the Spine chapter where Namari is outside the gate of Spine, and again we're zoomed back so we can see just how big the front gate is, but also the people and the scenery. So I really enjoyed getting those pages in the book. I'm trying to find the last one I was thinking of. Oh, where is it? It was one where when I looked at it, I was like, that's a photograph. That's not animation. They didn't make that in a computer.
While you're finding that, I just want to touch base on, this is probably the most fighting we've ever seen in a Disney film. Like hand-to-hand combats, like swordplay fight. Because I don't remember any other film that had any of this kind of action in it.
You're right. Even though Mulan has a sword, like, she doesn't use it very much. 152 to 153. Where they're floating down the river, you have these hills on either side. I looked at this, I was like, there's no way this is animated. They did not make this. It looks like a photograph. I thought they built the boat and we're like, let's put it in the water so we can see what we want. But it's at the very end. And it's after that double page, after the color script, where that like unfolds. It's right after that. And it just took my breath away. I kept coming back to this two-side. Again, the scenery and the scope is just gorgeous, and it did not look like animation to me.
Wait, this is CGI?
I thought so.
Is it?
Maybe it's not. I thought it was, or is that one of their reference photographs? But it looks exactly like the boat that they take out of Tail that's on the river.
Oh, yeah, it has to be, because Sisu is on there.
Oh, yeah, if you look closely, you can see a blue squiggle.
Because I'm baffled at it. Like, hello.
Yeah, there were moments in the film where just the backgrounds looked so real to me, and the water here. I'm looking at the same page as well, and I think if you didn't point out Sisu, like we're sitting here questioning it, but I believe it's a digital composition, which is amazing to think how far we've come from a CGI film like Toy Story, where all the kids at the birthday party are Andy because they didn't want to reanimate too many different kids. Like Andy, copy paste, and now we have this beautiful background here.
Crazy. Yeah, no, the animation is gorgeous.
They even said in the book, I can't find the quote exactly, but how Raya and the Last Dragon is kind of like the culmination of all the lessons they've learned from their full CGI films, like Hair and Tangled, like creating fine textures, Water and Moana. Like Raya has all of that they've been able to learn since that first, since Tangled, right? First full CGI film.
Yeah, Tangled was their first CGI film for the Walt Disney Animation Studio.
So Raya, we get to see all of that artistry and technology really enhanced and come together, which, again, it was that photo for me that I was flipping through. I was like, beautiful. I love this. I like that they gave a lot of credit to the set extension and to the background designers. As much as we love these characters, like the world itself is just a big part of the success of this film. And then I got to that last one. I was like, no, they didn't make this. This is a reference photo. I was like, no, it has to be. I saw this scene I just finished watching the film. I saw this scene and it blew my mind. Absolutely.
Well, I really liked on page 17, Frankie had mentioned earlier the distinct animation of the prologue where it is 2D animation, similar to the opening of Moana, as you mentioned, but distinct in its style. And I just really like the image of a young girl with Sisu. I'd like to think it's Raya, or at least representative of her or symbolic of that in its prologue. But I just thought that was a beautiful style of animation. I liked almost the puppetry of it. So to see that as its initial rendering in the book was a real treat.
Well, speaking of the puppetry, that is a traditional way to hand down stories, especially during festivals and things like that. So it is accurately represented in, again, most Southeast Asian cultures, and even in East Asian cultures, because I remember seeing stuff like this in Japan where they were trying to tell a story and they would just use, flat bait puppets to create that visualization.
Cool. No, I love the deeper connection to it.
And they brought some of that style a little bit back to the credits. This was some of the most beautiful credits I've ever seen from Walt Disney Animation. Like, I watched the entire credits because the colors were beautiful. It's kind of like an extension story of like the crew and everyone hanging out and getting to spend more time together after their big adventure. But it's that 2D animation again with that very distinctive Southeast Asian style. And it was just so beautiful. I just kept watching. I was entranced the entire time.
Now, my page of reference is not, as grand as y'all's, because I'm over here like looking at page 89 and it's like Captain Boone's ship and his cart of food.
Hey, you like Captain Boone? Nothing wrong with that.
He was fun. He's a fun character.
I love how like the kitchen on the ship, because like, so it's very common, at least in other Southeast Asian cultures. Heck, even my family, we have what they call a dirty kitchen, which is where all the food is made from like the outside and all like the messy food and things like that. So that's what this reminds me of, is like a dirty kitchen, or like a kitchen where for like a food truck or like a night stall and things like that, where it's very efficient for the specific dishes that they're making. Like if you've ever watched these videos on TikTok or YouTube, and you'll see like the Asian market, and they're very different in terms of how they make their food, but they're so efficient, but they make great quality food. So like that's what that reminds me of, is what is the best way for Captain Boone to have shrimp and congee? Like what is the easiest way for him to turn a profit, make sure they're good quality food, and give it to his guests.
Now I want Captain Boone's shrimp and koji quick service restaurant somewhere at Disney. Like, you get to go on the boat and get it to go. I mean, I hope they would do the cuisine justice, but that would be such a fun way to immerse it.
Funny about that is Animal Kingdom in Pandora, the Tule Canteen. They do have Southeast Asian food over there. I know that they had the mousse, like this blueberry, or I don't know, one of like the desserts that they have over there. I'm pretty sure the purple is ube. Ube is like this. It's a Filipino flavor, sort of like a purple yam like type situation. Um, the egg rolls that they call over there, the lumpia, which is pineapple and banana or something like that, or cream cheese, I think. It was some weird like combination. I don't know where that came from. And the noodles and the meat they served over there, they're like stir fry again. It's very, similar to a lot of Southeast Asian like food in general. So it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to put Raya and the Last Dragon in Animal Kingdom. I know they did have the sand sculpture for Raya and the Last Dragon,
cool.
like when the movie first came out, which was really cool. I know they still have Raya and the Last Dragon treats inspired at Animal Kingdom. So they have like a sisu ice cream cone, like a soft serve. It's like blue and stuff. It's really cute. What does it taste like?
So it was blue and pink, and the pink was strawberry ice cream. It was a swirl, kind of like you'd get a chocolate and vanilla swirl. It was just strawberry and vanilla, but the vanilla was dyed blue and then came on like a cool waffle cone that had been dipped in like white chocolate that was blue with sprinkles. It was very good. I love soft serve ice cream. So as soon as I saw that on Instagram, I was like, it's happening.
I need to go back to Animal Kingdom and eat that.
I thought where the Captain Boone shrimp boat can go, if you're at Animal Kingdom, picture like you're heading to Dino Land, but just before, if you veer to the right, where Pocahontas and her friend Miko would sometimes meet, there's that dock landing that used to be a boat ride way back in the day. Like, perfect spot, right on the water. Pocahontas can meet with her friends elsewhere.
We can take it a step further. What if it is a boat ride eating experience?
I would pay extra.
So it would be like an intimate dining experience.
Rivers of Light, who? Captain Boone ship, let's go.
Yes.
This is what we've reached it. We were like tossing ideas out, and now we've hit the jackpot.
Found the sweet spot. I love it. Well, we can leave our listeners with some. Actually, I think my email just came through. If you heard that, so I'm going to redo that. Well, we can leave our listeners with some other ideas or things to check out beyond our own. So we always love to share additional resources if you enjoyed Raya or this content, things along that nature. I would love to recommend on YouTube, there's a video titled Raya and the Last Dragon, Welcome Kelly Marie Tran, and this was a video on the official Walt Disney Animation Studios YouTube channel, and other members of the Disney voiceover family like Jodie Benson, Jonathan Groff, Anika Nani Rose, Ming-Na Wen, Paige O'Hara, and Jennifer Goodwin welcome Kelly Marie Tran, who is the voice of Raya, as we said, to the Disney voiceover family, and her reactions are just absolutely adorable. You can tell how much the moment means to her, and it's just a cute, feel-good clip.
I would like to recommend, Courtney, I'm going to steal your normal thing.
That's okay.
But I was so excited to see how many extras there are on Disney Plus for Raya and the Last Dragon. So I know Courtney always raves about her Blu-ray bonus features, which don't always make it over to Disney Plus, but Raya and the Last Dragon has a lot. And this includes a short of the making of Kumandra about creating this new world. There's quite a few deleted scenes in the original storyboard format. I love getting to see storyboard because we talk about it, we're like, they exist and yay animation, but actually getting to see like how they would tell this and getting to see the storyboard art, I always think is really cool. Like if you were sitting in on the meeting and hearing them tell what the story writers came up with. There's a video of the making of Raya from the pandemic. This was a film made in 2020, and a lot of the animators worked from home. So they have a tribute to that, which I think is something that's also really unique to this film that will only exist for this film. There is another about food. There's like a whole 20-minute thing about food, which is great. And then the one I was most excited about was called We Are Kumandra, which is which features what they called the Southeast Asia Story Trust, which was the group of people they brought together to help conduct the research, be cultural ambassadors on the film, and they get to showcase the cultural influences in this short, I think it's like 10 to 12 minutes, about what helped inspired the world building and story of Kumandra. So lots of bonus features. Definitely check those out.
And then for my resources, so I actually have two people on Instagram that are both content creators. They are both Asian. One is Monica Elio, MonicaJoelleo. She is of Filipino descent, and she creates lots of Asian Pacific Islander culture content, as well as teaching like older history of the Philippines and different other cultures within the Philippines itself, as well as Raya and the Last Dragon, and just so many other things with that. And then with the other Instagrammer I have is Lexi the First, so lex.the.first. She's also Asian, and she does create amazing content. She does a lot of cosplay and fandom content, but she did create a few of stuff for Raya. Disney did reach out to both Lexi and Monica about Raya and the Last Dragon to give them private screening, as well as like products to help promote the movie prior to the release, which was really cool. And they are also both former Disney cast members as well, so they know their stuff about Disney movies and things like that, and they both love the film. Now, I do want to say there is a song on YouTube called Trust Again, which is inspired by Raya and the Last Dragon, which is actually released from Disney Music Asia on their Vivo channel. And they do have, I think, two to three different languages spoken within the song itself. So if you have a chance to check that out, I would definitely check that out. And obviously, there's me, Franky. I am on hiatus about my podcast, but I'm very active on my Instagram under Franky the Shorty.
Lots of great resources. I started following both of the content creators you had mentioned, and wow, very cool stuff. And it made me hyped for it, because like you said, because of the pandemic, it kind of didn't get the full pomp and circumstance that it should have, but the outpouring of love from a lot of online content creators helped me get excited for the film, and was really cool to see how many people really wanted to promote this film and how special it was, particularly to our cast members and also our people of Southeast Asian culture, which was great. I have one more resource, which is not specific to Raya and the Last Dragon, but we are getting another new film. Disney and Pixar's Luca is coming to Disney Plus on June 18th, which is really exciting to have both Raya and a new Pixar film coming out within 3 months of each other. This is crazy. So our friends at Chronicle Books also published The Art of Disney and Pixar's Luca. And if you've been enjoying our art series, Art of Soul and now Art of Raya and the Last Dragon, we encourage you to also add Art of Luca to your coffee table and dive into a swimmingly sensational summer and get excited for this new film.
Yeah, and speaking of summer, we are ready to kick off our Sinister Summer series. Our next 2 episodes will be focused on Tales from the Haunted Mansion. So each summer we like to do a little theme. We did Kingdom Keepers 2 years ago, and last summer we did a Cinema Summer series focusing on live action films that were inspired by original books, so comparing those. But we will be diving into original books about the Haunted Mansion. It's a 4-volume set, and we have the description from Amazon right here. So this 4-book box set is based on the attractions from the Disney parks, with each new book telling the story of one of the Haunted Mansion's 999 ghosts. With eerie illustrations throughout, the books are designed to look like they came straight from the library in the Haunted Mansion. Tales from the Haunted Mansion is a fun, spooky ride just like the attraction from the Disney parks. And if readers are familiar with the ride, they'll see elements of it throughout the story, from items straight out of the mansion. one? Are those pictures stretching to lyrics from the narration that is heard in each Doom buggy? And who is our narrator? Well, it's Amicus Arcade, the Haunted Mansion librarian and host, your ghost host. So we'll be splitting the 4 books into 2 episodes. Our next episode will feature Volume 1, The Fearsome Foursome, and Volume 2, Midnight at Madame Leota's. While you read up on your ghost stories, you can keep up with us, Book of the Mouse Club, on Twitter and Instagram at Book of the Mouse, or email us with comments or ideas to bookofthemouseclub@gmail.com. Please be sure to leave us a review on iTunes so others can find our podcast and read and listen along with us. If you want to keep up with me, Courtney, I'm on Instagram at GreatGuthby and Twitter at Courtney_Guth.
And you can keep up with me, Emily, on both Instagram and Twitter at the same handle at Emily_McD. And Franky, thank you so much for joining us. You started sharing your social earlier, and we'd love for you to share it one more time so that all of our listeners can add you to their follow list. So where can we keep up with you?
You can keep up with me on Instagram at Franky the Shorty. That's with Franky with a Y, not with an IE. And as well as my podcast that is on hiatus, but listen to those as well under Frankly Franky.
And we have both of those linked in our show notes. Please, I highly encourage, guys, you're going to want to add Franky to your feed. So much fun content, really relevant, great voice to add to all of your podcasts and to your social media. So Franky, as our guest of honor, you get to choose the quote to end our episode. So what do you have to close us out today?
So the quote I chose is specifically from Raya and the Last Dragon, and the quote is, "If we don't stop and learn to trust one another again, it's only a matter of time before we tear each other apart." Chief Benjo.
I think that is true to the heart, again, no pun intended, of Raya and the Last Dragon. And we're so glad that you trusted us to come on and talk about the film and the book with us today. Thank you again for joining this. This has been such a pleasure to learn from each other and discuss.
Thanks. This is the first time I actually read all of my art of book, like all at like in a deeper level. So it was great to read it.
All right, and listeners, we hope to see you for our summer series. And until next time, happy reading.
Book of the Mouse Club has no affiliation with the Walt Disney Company. The views and opinions expressed by hosts and participants are theirs and theirs alone. They do not represent the organizations or companies they happen to work for.